The host of Isengard roared, swaying this way and that, turning from fear to fear. Again the horn sounded from the tower. Down through the breach of the dike charged the king's company. Down from the hills leaped Erkenbrand, lord of Westfold. Down leaped Shadowfax, like a deer that runs sure-footed in the mountains. The White Rider was upon them, and the terror of his coming filled the enemy with madness.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. This week we are reading Book 3, Chapter 7 of The Two Towers. Helm's Deep. My name's Logan.
And my name is Zach. We are here. Helm's Deep.
Yeah, dude. Helm's Deep. We probably say this every week, but one of the great chapters. One of the great chapters.
Yeah. Dare I say, again, my favorite chapter of Lord of the Rings. No, it's maybe not my favorite, but I really do love this chapter.
I love this chapter. Let me count the ways. I love Gimli in this chapter.
Gimli is awesome.
He comes into his own. It's like his chapter in some ways, even though he kind of goes missing for part of it. He's so in his element. He says at the beginning of the chapter, this is more like it, basically.
Yeah. I felt how solid this land is beneath my feet the moment we walked down. I'm here for it. Yeah.
And then of course there's the whole back and forth, about how, who has more kills.
Their kill count. Yeah.
Which the movie really, I think, plays up as like a fun thing. But I really love it in this chapter, and it shows, I think, Tolkien's kind of he's got a sense of humor even in these real, I don't know, serious, dire, chapters. Wonder what he was like in the trenches. You know what I mean? Maybe he had a sense of humor about him. But
oh, interesting. Yeah.
But I love that. I love Aragorn's, kind of rushing all over the place. He's definitely this battlefield general, and the way that these minor characters from Rohan arise and become heroic in ways you don't expect, and I think that plays into Tolkien's always given us background names of characters who we never meet again, but they get in this chapter, they get to play a really important role. And I don't know, it's just everything you like about Lord of the Rings is in here, I think.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's kind of a weirdly understated chapter.
Absolutely. Yes. It's kind of, it's breezy in a way.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what you said to me this morning. You're like, wow, what a breezy chapter. In my head, I'm thinking it's one of the two biggest battles in the entire book.
Totally.
Is right here. I think it's worth noting just how much the movie version of Helm's Deep is so burned into my brain that I almost have to actively switch it off when I'm reading the chapter, because it is so different than the movie. I mean, the movie turns it into a 40-minute long sequence,
right,
of a 3-hour movie. And so it's, a significant chunk of that movie is just the Battle of Helm's Deep. Right. And, with this, it's a relatively short chapter.
Yeah. I was, as I sat down to read, the way my week went, I just didn't have very much time to read this week. And when I sat down to read, I was like, geez, this is going to take forever. Helm's Deep is a 40-minute, long scene. But then when I flipped through and I was like, oh, this is only 16 pages. It's really not. And it's not dense, some of the chapters that we've read recently.
No.
And so it really does kind of breeze along. There are parts where I got kind of lost, and I think I was just tired, but I'm excited to read closely today, because there's some parts that I was kind of confused about what was happening.
Yeah.
But it's really unlike the chapters that surround it, and it's really effective, I think.
It seems to me that it's clearly written by somebody who knows what war actually is.
Yeah.
He has firsthand experience of these types of feelings and interactions, but he also doesn't glorify battle. I mean, maybe with the exception of Gimli and Legolas's, game.
Yeah.
That might be seen as kind of like reveling in the beauty and the excitement of combat. But I think a lot of people, like I was reading some of the discourse online, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, well, the movie version of this is way better because they spend more time on it and it's got much more action. But Tolkien didn't like war.
Yeah. Yeah.
He
Right.
experienced two really big ones in his lifetime, and one firsthand and one with his son, actively in harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think he had like kind of a rosy view of war. In fact, I think he's pretty critical of people who are kind of gung ho for battle throughout Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I think he recognizes the human cost of it and doesn't want to spend a lot of time on it. Kind of famously, the Battle of Five Armies happens mostly like off the page because Bilbo gets knocked out by a rock like right at the beginning of the battle, and then kind of gets told what happens after he wakes up.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's been a critique of Tolkien in the past, that he doesn't spend as much time talking about battles as he does like, the way trees look.
Yeah.
But that just kind of, I think, shows his personality. He wasn't immune to the glory and the excitement of battle, but he also doesn't romanticize it. He doesn't
Right.
lionize it.
There's an excitement and a horror mixed, I think, in this chapter really effectively, where, we get to follow Gimli and Legolas around the battlefield and Aragorn and, see them achieve things and struggle and succeed. But we also get a lot of descriptions of, people falling and being, being, killed. And even there's even some, I think, descriptions of, the Dunlendings, the men who are fighting with the orcs that are not, I wouldn't call them sympathetic necessarily, but
I think
they
it's a great
are
word for it.
Yeah, they are like they're human beings. They're recognized as human beings in a way that the orcs aren't, which I think kind of goes back to some of our conversations about orcs kind of being like more like ants, than they are
Inhuman,
like people in some way. But I think that I don't know if it's a realistic, right? Like description of like what a, kind of medieval war
Siege
was like, but it's realistic in its like emotional, it's like emotional valence or whatever, right? Like
it feels real.
And that's the part where I think, as you said, like Tolkien knew what this was like.
Yeah.
And I think there probably was some excitement being in a battle, right? Like you're just from your adrenaline,
Yeah.
But also just like an equal amount or more than equal amount of just like terror.
In a lot of ways, this is like the most unrealistic depiction of a siege ever, because like medieval sieges usually lasted like months, and people just died of starvation because they were just holed up for so long. I mean, this happens over the course of like a single night. That's just not how sieges work. But yeah, I think it's once we kind of start breaking down like what actually happens in the battle, it can be a little bit confusing, especially if you have the events of the movie kind of in the back of your mind. But once you kind of understand where the players are on the map and you understand all their motivations, I think it just has this like perfect cohesion. Like, we talked about this with the White Rider episode. He just has such a crystal clear understanding of what's going on that even if you don't, you can kind of just like let go and just let him take you where he's going. Like, nobody does anything in this chapter that doesn't make sense. Everything makes sense.
That's one of the things I think is so pleasurable about reading this book. It's also perhaps one of the things that gets in people's way because they're like, I don't know if I can read another description of like, some castle that I've never heard of.
Some valley.
But it's like, no, like you're just like in the lazy river with Tolkien. He's, and that's, if you can kind of like let go and just kind of allow yourself to be pulled along. It's, it's really beautiful. It's like nothing.
You could be Sam Gamgee in the boat, or you could be Aragorn steering the boat, and you'll get just as much out of it.
Absolutely, that's
just as real.
Yeah.
You can put on a like snorkeling mask and like dive down to the bottom, or you can just like float on an inner tube.
Bob along on the top. Yeah.
And either way, it's going to be a enjoyable experience. And you might do it different ways, different times. I mean, right now we're getting very granular. I mean, other people go far more granular than us.
Oh yeah, we're not even close to like what you could do.
But yeah, we're kind of like maybe in the middle. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's available to you. Do you want to just kind of like, before we get into the details of the chapter, do you want to just like kind of like give like a overview of like what actually happens in the chapter and like why they end up at Helm's Deep? Would that be fruitful, you think?
yeah, I think so. Kind of like the major plot points or the arc of the story here.
Okay, so as I see it, and feel free to jump in with any details.
Yeah.
So Theoden is under Sauron and Wormtongue's influence and spell. He's enfeebled in Edoras. And while he is doing nothing, being told by Grima how great he is and he doesn't need to do anything, his son is at the river Isen, holding back the forces of Isengard.
And there's a ford. There's a shallow part of the river where the orcs are trying to get across.
Right, and they're preventing them from crossing. And there's a couple battles that happen there that we hear about, in the surrounding chapters. But that is where Theodred, the king's son, dies 5 days before we meet Theoden.
Right.
And there is like a host of people, they call them the king's men, who are defending that ford. And Theoden is just doing nothing back in Edoras. And that's like the tension between him and Éomer and the rest of his knights. It's why aren't we like going out and bringing the battle to this ford and keeping back the forces of Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
And so once Theoden wakes up, once Gandalf kind of releases him from his spell, he immediately goes into action. And
Right.
he's like, we need to march as quickly as we can to support these men who are holding back the orcs at the fords of the river Isen.
Yeah.
And so that's what they do. They get together everybody that they can, they gear up, and they are on their way to that battle when they're met by like basically the retreating forces who say like, that's a lost cause. Like, we are lost there. We need to retreat back. And so they left a small number of people in Edoras with Éowyn as their captain.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a choice. Do they try and bring the fight to them, like kind of like in an open area, which is a bad idea?
Mm-hmm.
Do they retreat all the way back to Edoras and try and defend them from Edoras, but it's not a great defensive position? Or do they fall back kind of halfway to Helm's Deep,
Right.
which is kind of a natural choke point? And so that's what they decide to do. Now, here's the question. Why didn't the forces of Isengard just march right past Helm's Deep straight to Edoras and sack Edoras? That would have been a much easier thing for them to do. It's because the folks at Helm's Deep, if they march past them, now they're caught between Edoras and Helm's Deep and they can attack them from both sides.
Yeah.
You don't want to be caught with an enemy behind and an enemy in front. So that's why they have this battle here at Helm's Deep.
Yeah, it's not enough to just sort of like take the capital and say, we win. It's not like you're playing.
Because then you have a whole other army coming back at
right.
you.
Right. Because I think Edoras is defensible, but not like ultra defensible,
No.
And so, yeah, I think in this kind of battle, you actually have to destroy the forces that you're arrayed against.
Right.
Also, I think maybe this plays into, what you said earlier, that like this isn't actually really how a siege works.
Yeah.
But for Sauron, he has to destroy these forces
quickly.
Like now.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. And so it makes sense that you would pursue the army. Plus, I think there's a way in which like orcs are not really like strategic.
No.
And so like it's just this like swarm that's coming after them.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, in that case, it does make sense to go to this like fortified, defensible position.
And Gandalf is out running on Shadowfax in like superhuman speed
Yeah,
kind of collecting.
It says that people see him here and there. They've like seen him all over the land.
Yeah, he's like
basically.
a flash, you know.
Yeah,
he doesn't look real. What he's doing is gathering the rest of the troops who had like retreated.
Yeah.
And it says at the end that he has like a force of about 1,000 men. Yeah. And so, you know, for the armies of Sauron, if they just march straight to Edoras, now you have the small number of people who are defending Edoras, and you have the group that is already with Theoden and Éomer and Aragorn, plus all the people that Gandalf is summoning, including Erkenbrand and other people, coming behind you, and that's not what you want. So it makes like perfect like strategic sense for this battle to happen where it does, but the stakes are so different than how they are in the movie. The stakes are very different in the movie, and I think that they did this because it's like it creates more tension and higher stakes. In the movie, Theoden is woken up, and then he kind of comes into his own. But then they're like, "Hey, you need to like march on Saruman and take care of this threat now." And he goes, "Nope, not going to do it.
Oh, that's
we're going to take all of our men, all of our women, all of our children, and we're going to go to Helm's Deep and go to our ancient holdfast there."
Right.
And then, so the stakes are higher because now you have like all of the orcs coming, and now you have like all your women and children, and that's what you're defending.
You're like defending the nation.
Yeah. Which is just it's not the same as what's going on here. There are women and children of the Westfold, which is like the western part of Rohan, who have retreated to Helm's Deep. And so there are women and children they're defending, but it's not like the entire nation that is like behind the walls of Helm's Deep. So the stakes are different. I think I like this version better because it doesn't, like, I always, when I was a kid watching the Lord of the Rings movies, I'm always like, all right, Theoden was just like woken up and he like is like coming into his own, and now he's retreating to Helm's Deep. It didn't make any sense. It created this like tension between him and Aragorn.
It also makes it seem like everybody in Rohan lives in one city. You know what I mean?
It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it's this huge. It's this huge country. Even in this chapter, even in this chapter, it says they go like 40 leagues to the River Isen, which is what 120 miles.
Gosh, far.
And so like even that is like super far. Gimli's like falling asleep by the time they get to, or he talks about how tired he is. He's like, you know, this is tiring work being in a saddle. Right. He's not even the one, you know, driving the horse. But, and so, yeah, this is more, well, it is more realistic. You know, it's not, but, you know, I guess it makes sense that in a movie, you can only do so much. And I think it, you know, ratcheting up those stakes makes sense. But here, yeah, it's just a more interesting picture of the world and the way
it's Tolkien's logistical mind. He's not going to present something that's like unrealistic or impossible. He has just a very clear understanding of the geography and, you know, the culture.
Yeah.
And so the stakes are there. It's just laid out differently. It's much more understated. It's quicker. In fact, this morning I was thinking about how it reads almost like a stage play. Like you can almost imagine this being like a production at like a, you know, in the round, like almost like a Shakespearean kind of production. Cause you have like a lot of exposition explaining what's going on. You have moments where like Aragorn goes like, it's the blasting fire of Sauron. And that's kind of all we get. You know, it's not like, and it was made of this material and they placed it here in this way. And you can almost imagine a few players on a dark stage kind of explaining what's happening, and you have to kind of understand it like in subtler description.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think it's a huge part of why this, I think, counts as literature and not just like genre fiction. It like invites you in. You're like, the blasting fire of Orthanc. What is that? You know?
Yeah.
And then you like think about it, and then people draw pictures of it. You know, it inspires all this other stuff.
It's gunpowder. It's
gunpowder. It's TNT. It's you know, plus it's got some like magical. You know, I don't know. Like, what is it? Right? Like that interpretation is happening in your brain. You know?
Yeah.
And it's again like, I think again like this chapter. It's like all those like things you love about Lord of the Rings are here, you know? Yeah, so, okay. 100%. So they end up retreating to Helm's Deep.
Yes.
But I love the description that we get. I don't know. Do you want to get into that, or do you want to stay on the, like, a little bit higher level?
I think we can just like kind of start getting into it now. I think that like that's the part that I was most confused about until pretty recently when I did a little bit more research. It's like,
I see.
all
That
right,
makes
how
sense.
do they even end up at Helm's Deep in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why make that choice? That makes sense.
But it has like an internal cohesion to it. It's not random.
So can I talk a little bit about what Helm's Deep is?
Yeah, sure.
So Helm's Deep, it's funny, we get these like levels of description, and he does it pretty quickly, just in a couple of paragraphs. Right. It's basically a bay in the mountains, right? So if you think about the mountains as land, I mean they are land, right? But like the mountains as land and the grasslands as water. It's a bay that opens in the mountains. So there's a choke point.
Yep.
And it's this kind of like gorge.
Calls it a deeping combe.
Yeah. So it's like a gorge that goes into the mountains.
Right.
And it gets steeper and narrower as you go in and in and in. So that's Helm's Deep. It's a mountain formation.
So Helm's Deep is a like geographic location, yes.
Yeah. So it's a formation in the mountains. And then there's something called Helm's Gate.
Yes.
Which is a sort of before the mouth of the deep, there was a heel of rock thrust outward by a northern cliff. And then, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think there's a dike even outside the gate.
Oh, there's the dike too, Helm's Dike outside the gate. So
it's like a kind of a natural...
Which is like a trench.
It's a trench.
Yeah.
A defensible trench. So you have like these like narrowing coming to the caves. And I think it's like based off of Cheddar's Gorge, which is a real place.
Really? Interesting.
In England, where you have these defensible positions that get narrower and narrower until you end up at the caves themselves, like inside the mountain.
So there's the dike, that's like a trench. But
so
then
there's like dike, gate,
right,
and then the Hornburg.
And then the Hornburg is actually the fortress.
Yes,
that's kind of like up on one side, and I think the movie does a pretty good job of
absolutely
this. So there's the Hornburg, which is this fortress up on the side, and then there's the wall, which is called the Deepening Wall,
right?
Which is this super thick wall. You kind of get the sense that like even the people of Rohan are like, how did they even build this thing? You know?
Yeah, like it was built by the hands of giants or something.
Right. It's like talks about how perfectly the stones are laid so that you can't even like get purchase on it and that kind of thing. Yep. So.
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting because like in my mind, I kind of think of Helm's Deep as like the fortress and the wall.
Yeah.
But that's not really, Helm's Deep is this like much bigger formation that's just a defensible position.
Yes.
And then it's been fortified by, people to be even more defensible.
Yeah. And the Hornburg, let me read this little description here of the Hornburg. At Helm's Gate, before the mouth of the deep, there was a heel of rock thrust outward by the northern cliff. So you can kind of imagine almost like the same as Minas Tirith.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're building into these natural formations. There upon its spur stood high walls of ancient stone, and within them was a lofty tower. Men said that in far-off days of the glory of Gondor, the sea kings had built here this fastness with the hands of giants. The Hornburg it was called, for a trumpet sounded upon the tower, echoed in the deep behind, as if armies long forgotten were issuing to war from the caves beneath the hills. So they call it the Hornburg because if you blow a horn on top of the berg, on top of this jutting out of rock, it echoes so loud that it like scares people.
It's like Trumpet Mountain, It's like
exactly. And so I think that's a really, we've set ourselves up here to kind of like dive into the chapter now. Yeah, I think we can just kind of understand the motivations. Theoden is not looking to retreat. Theoden is looking to bring the fight to the enemy.
Yeah, he wants a fight. Mm-hmm.
Everybody is with him on that. They are like begging him to command them. Gandalf runs off very abruptly to the point where people like question his motivations. They're like, all right, maybe Grim and Wormtongue wasn't like that far off. Like, he's leaving us right now. That's because he has to go and like gather up all the other people of the Westfold who had been part of these earlier battles. It all just makes sense. Everybody's motivations are aligned, and the actions that come from those motivations are perfectly explainable by all the sets of circumstances that Tolkien has laid out.
Yeah.
So you want to just jump right in?
Yeah.
So it says 40 leagues and more it was as a bird flies from Edoras to the fords of the Isen, where they hoped to find the king's men that held back the hosts of Saruman. So that, like, in brief, kind of sets up where they're going. It says the hosts rode on, need drove them, fearing of coming too late. So they're going as quickly as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And Gandalf asks Legolas to, like, use his keen elf eyes. He's done this a few times recently.
Actually, when I read this time, I was like, okay, we get it. He can see well.
All like right. He can tell the difference between, like, different birds from a long way off. Like, we get it. Yeah, he's got elf eyes.
I felt like it started to get a little redundant. Legolas says that he can see darkness. He can see shapes in it.
Right.
Great shapes far away upon the bank of the river, but what they are, I cannot tell. What is he actually looking at here?
So, as I understand it, I think these are the Huorns.
Okay, that's what I thought too.
I think these are the trees that are, like, formerly Ints who have gone, like, more tree-ish.
Uh-huh.
You know, the Ints are marching on Isengard, and I think that Treebeard has, like, commanded this like ghost army of trees to
like additional forces, right?
Yeah, to march to support Rohan. But let me read this description. I think this will give some context for why I think this. It says, I can see a darkness. There are shapes moving in it, great shapes far away upon the bank of the river, but what they are I cannot tell. It is not mist or cloud that defeats my eyes. There is a veiling shadow that some power lays upon the land, and it marches slowly downstream. It is as if the twilight under endless trees were flowing downward from the hills. So I think this is the Huorns, that the forest that comes, like, behind the forces of Saruman in Helm's Deep at the end of the chapter.
And that's so like Tolkien to give us a little
foreshadowing.
On your first reading, you don't know what this is. You just know it's something coming.
Maybe on my 20th reading, I didn't know what this was.
Right, but to give that foreshadowing at the beginning of the chapter, you know,
right,
that is gonna pay off literally, like in like the whatever second to last paragraph, is so like Tolkien, and it's so provocative and just like interesting. Right. That's part of, like, you know, Tolkien's kind of got your hand. I just love that.
Yeah. And it rewards like multiple readings.
Right, but it also gives you a little bit of a feeling of dread. You're like, what is this? You know?
Yeah. Is it some evil thing? What is it?
He doesn't need to use a bunch of women and children to, like, make you feel uneasy, right? He can give you a description of a shadowy thing far off that you're like, oh God, like,
yeah,
it's already bad enough, you know, and then there's something else over there. Turns out that it's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also think Gandalf can, like, interpret what's happening. You know what I mean? Especially now that he's the White Rider.
Yeah. So they make a bivouac. They can't make this journey in just one day.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's interesting that it's going to take him more than a day riding on horse to get 40 leagues, and that's like the same distance that the three hunters, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, run with the Book of Mirazabal on their back, and in like 3.5 days on foot. That puts their running even more in perspective to me, I think, just how far they ran.
Yeah, that's why Éomer's like, I call you Wingfoot, because he's like shocked, right?
Yeah, he's like, I don't know if I could go that fast on my horse.
Yeah, he knows what this country is like. You know, it's large, it's far,
and it's hard running. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
they start their second day of riding. Someone comes up to them. It goes, in the last red glow, men in the vanguard saw a black speck, a horseman riding back towards them. They halted, awaiting him. So this is a person retreating from these battles on the fords of Isen. And he says, is Éomer here? You come at last, but too late, and with too little strength. Things have gone evilly since Theodred fell. We were driven back yesterday over the Isen with great loss. Many perished at the crossing. Then at night, fresh forces came over the river against our camp. All Isengard must be emptied, and Saruman has armed the wild hillmen and herdfolk of Dunland beyond the rivers, and these also he loosed upon us. So what I wanted to point out here is that Theodred was basically like the force that was keeping Saruman back.
Yeah.
His leadership. So as his father was kind of enfeebled, incapacitated in Edoras, he was actually taking command of the armies.
Yep.
Which in my mind almost makes Theoden's lack of mourning for Theodred even. Maybe it explains it. Maybe there's some shame.
He's embarrassed or ashamed. Right.
We learned from the man that Erkenbrand of Westfold has drawn off those men he could gather towards his fastness in Helm's Deep. The rest are scattered. So we have Erkenbrand moving towards his fastness. So Erkenbrand has been like preparing for basically this eventuality. There in the Hornburg at Helm's Gate, Erkenbrand, master of Westfold on the borders of the Mark, now dwelt. As the days darkened with threat of war, being wise, he had repaired the wall and made the fastness strong. So he's like prepared Helm's Deep for a siege.
Yeah.
He has retreated with his men to Helm's Deep. So people are already making their way to Helm's Deep, but the rest are scattered.
Right.
And those are the men that Gandalf is going to rally. But the man says, "Where is Éomer? Tell him there is no hope ahead. He should return to Edoras before the wolves of Isengard come here." So he doesn't realize that he's talking to the king, because in his mind, the king is an old man who sits back in Edoras.
And Theoden is kind of hidden. He's behind his guards.
Right.
But he does come forward and he says, "Come stand before me. I'm here. The last host of the Eorlingas has ridden forth. It will not return without battle."
And the man is like overjoyed by that.
He says, "Command me, Lord, and pardon me. I thought," Theoden gets it. He's not so proud that he knows that he's been embarrassed and he's been under this kind of spell.
And he says, like, you thought that I was an old man on my chair bent, like, what does he say? Like a tree weighted with snow.
Yeah, old tree under winter snow. But he says a west wind has shaken the boughs.
That's Gandalf, baby.
Yeah, totally. Give this man a fresh horse, and they ride to the help of Erkenbrand.
That's what brings us to Helm's Deep. Gandalf leaves very abruptly. It says, while Theoden was speaking, Gandalf rode a short way ahead and sat there alone, gazing north to Isengard and west to the setting sun. Now he came back. So it's like, I think he's doing his mind bending. He's doing his
far seeing or whatever he can do. Yeah,
exactly. He's surveying what's going on, because as we speak, the Battle of Isengard is going on.
Right.
So he's like checking that out. He's kind of looking. He's kind of surveying, like, okay, where could Erkenbrand be? Where could these people be? He comes back really abruptly. He says, "Ride, Theoden, ride to Helm's Deep. Go not to the fords of Isen, and do not tarry in the plain. I must leave you for a while. Shadowfax must bear me now on a swift errand." He turns, and to Aragorn and Éomer he says, "Keep well the Lord of the Mark till I return. Await me at Helm's Gate. Farewell." And he runs off on Shadowfax.
Yeah.
And here's the return of Hama.
Yeah, this odd little aside is so interesting to me. It's like literally set apart in the text.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's space between the paragraphs.
Yeah, we just get a little aside between Hama and an unnamed guard. "What does that mean?" said one guard to Hama. And Hama says, "That Gandalf Greyheim has need of haste. Ever he goes and comes unlooked for." The guard says, "Wormtongue, were he here, would not find it hard to explain." That's so strange. Does he have some kind of like faith in Wormtongue, or is it that Wormtongue, I don't know.
I think the same distrust that the guards show Gandalf when they're like, "Are you not a wizard?" or some phantom of Sauron.
Yeah.
I think there's a distrust of wizardry that
Oh, sure. Okay.
that is well
sense.
earned because of how Sauron has treated them. I think there's an understanding from, Theoden doesn't have like a full view of like just how dangerous Sauron is, because he's at Edoras while his men are fighting him at the fords.
So, Hama says,
our guy Hama.
Yeah, true enough. But for myself, I'll wait till I see Gandalf again. So he has this faith in Gandalf. And the guard says, "Maybe you will wait long."
Yeah.
Why does Tolkien show this? I mean, other than to highlight Hama's like faithfulness.
I think that's exactly why he does it.
You think that's it?
I think it sets it up for when Hama falls in battle.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
It gives us a reason to, it gives us another moment of like characterization of Hama's faith in Gandalf.
Right.
His faith in Gandalf is what set all these like events into action. If Hama had prevented them from entering, they wouldn't be here right now. So I think it's just another moment
Yeah.
of showing Hama's
think
faithfulness.
I think it's so fascinating the care and attention he gives to background characters. We never need to hear about Hama again, but I just so appreciate that
Yeah.
we get those kind of moments, and that
Yeah.
he completely sets it apart in like a section break. It gets its own little scene.
Yeah, I never noticed that, but you're so right. So they make their way into Helm's Deep, and we don't need to go into more description. I think we laid out the geography of where this battle is going to take place really well. But it says the riders were still in the low valley before the mouth of the Coombe when cries and horn blasts were heard from their scouts that went in front. Out of the darkness, arrows whistled. Swiftly, a scout rode back and reported that wolf riders were abroad in the valley, and that a host of orcs and wild men were hurrying southward from the fords of Isen and seemed to be making for Helm's Deep. They get there and they find out that Erkenbrand is not there. The scout says, "And we have met scattered companies going this way and that leaderless. What has become of Erkenbrand? None seem to know. It is likely that he will be overtaken ere he can reach Helm's Gate, if he has not already perished." Erkenbrand has done all this work to prepare it, but he's like not going to actually make it back himself. That type of chaos is like exactly what happens in real battles.
Yeah, right. Everything falls apart.
Yeah. And I think that adds a lot of realism, but it also sets up for the awesome like climax where Erkenbrand returns with Gandalf later. And, another like major change that happens in the movie depiction of this battle is that Éomer is with them right now. In the movies, they've set up that Éomer has been like become an outcast. Here in this story, Éomer was briefly imprisoned when he came back and told them about Gandalf and Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli, that he met them and gave them horses, and he threatens to kill Wormtongue, and that gets him imprisoned. But he's with them now. So the return in the movie is Gandalf going to get Éomer and his riders. Here, it's, Gandalf is getting Erkenbrand, which is a character we've not actually met. So I can see why they made that change in the movie.
Yeah, it's good to see a character instead of just like some guy with a red shield where you're like, who is that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is he there? Why is he there?
Everyone else seems really happy to see him when he does come back.
Yeah, it's true.
But it does make for like a pretty different set of stakes, and that I can see why they made those changes.
Right.
I love this line here. They're basically trying to assess like how big Sauron's forces are.
Yeah.
And the scout says, "It is very great. He that flies counts every foeman twice. Yet I have spoken to stout-hearted men, and I do not doubt that the main strength of the enemy is many times as great as all that we have here."
Yeah, I underline that line also.
He that flies counts every foeman twice.
When you're hasty, and when you're retreating, it really feels worse. So you think the force is bigger than it actually is.
I feel like that's a life lesson from Tolkien there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is true that they are many times outmatched.
Yep. Now they're riding through the night, I think is interesting that, they don't even have a chance to stop.
Yeah.
There's some forces that are already there, but it's really just that main force that they're worried about.
Right. Yeah. It seems like that number is small. It says they found few of the enemy before them, but they're able to see the light of the marching army because they're carrying torches.
Right.
Aragorn says it's a great host and follows us hard. And then Theoden says they bring fire and they are burning as they come, writ cotton tree. This was a rich vale and had many homesteads. Alas for my folk. So I think there's some regret here. He's like, I, through my inaction, allowed this destruction to happen.
Yeah. And they make it to the dike.
Éomer's like, hey, let's not go all the way to the Hornburg.
Right.
Let's just turn here at this dike and give battle here. Éomer says, not far ahead now lies Helm's Dike, an ancient trench and rampart, scored across the Coombe, 2 furlongs below Helm's Gate.
But it's too long. Theoden says, it's a mile long. So they really can't stop there. There's a reason they have to keep going.
They're like, basically like, we need to go all the way to the Hornburg, get behind those walls, and our rear guard will stay at the trench to slow the enemy forces from coming behind us and wiping us out before we can all get there.
Yeah.
But then they'll retreat back as well to the Hornburg.
Right.
So they get there and, they announce their arrival. The Lord of the Mark rides to Helm's Gate. Aemir answered, I, Aemir, son of Aemon, speak. Because they're challenged by a sentinel.
Right.
And the sentinel says, this is good tidings beyond hope. Hasten, the enemy is on your heels. Erkenbrand had left many men to hold Helm's Gate, and more since had escaped thither. So Erkenbrand, again, is just like, he has already sent forces there. And then other people, as they escaped from the defeat at the fords of the River Isen, have already manned this area.
It's interesting that all that happens without, it's not like they're communicating with Erkenbrand, they don't have like a radio. No. But he's just made good strategic decisions going back. I mean, it even says, back before there really was even a threat. It was just sort of like things seem
shadow
to be
of a threat.
Yeah, things seem to be getting bad, so we should probably fix things up.
Repair the wall. Yeah. Theoden asks, are you well stored? We bring little provision, for we rode forth to open battle, not to a siege. Gambling the old, who, another awesome little side character in this story.
Fantastic, yeah.
Says, behind us in the caves of the deep are 3 parts of the folk of the Westfold, old and young, children and women. But great store of food and many beasts and their fodder have also been gathered there. So this is basically the only sentence that we really get about the fact that there are women and children here as well.
Yeah.
I love this line from Gambling. If they come to bargain for our goods at Helm's Gate, they will pay a high price.
Yeah, that's great.
So Gimli and Legolas, they're sitting on a parapet.
Oh yeah, they get to the wall.
Legolas is fingering his bow and peering out into the gloom. And this is where we get this good like characterization of Gimli here. He's like, this is more to my liking. He stamps the stones. He goes, ever my heart rises as we draw near the mountains. There is good rock here. This country has tough bones.
That's great. Tough bones. I could feel it in my feet when we came up the dike.
Oh, he goes, give me a year and 100 of my kin, and I would make this a place that armies would break upon like water.
Legolas, he's not really a fan of mountains, he wants to be in the forest.
Yeah.
He says, I don't doubt it, but you are a dwarf and dwarves are strange folks. I don't really like this place. But he's taking comfort in Gimli's confidence.
I think it's interesting. He says, like, I'm glad to have you standing nigh with your stout legs and your hard axe.
Right.
But I wish there were more of your kin among us. Even more would I give for 100 good archers of Mirkwood. We shall need them. Peter Jackson takes that suggestion to heart.
He sure does.
He brought a bunch of elves.
Yeah, that's very cool in the movie.
It is.
You kind of want to see elves and humans and, dwarves fighting together.
But, I watched a video essay about this from In Deep Geek on YouTube, which is very worth checking out if you've never heard him.
Yeah.
He points out that the reason why this is so important as a battle is this is a turning point in human history.
Right.
This is a time when men, without the help of elves or dwarves or anyone else, stand toe-to-toe with orcs and win.
Right.
Because, elves aren't around anymore. Why is that? Because this is the age of men.
Right.
One last little Gimli line here. It is dark for archery. Indeed, it is time for sleep. Sleep! I feel the need of it as never I thought any dwarf could. Riding is tiring work. Yet my axe is restless in my hand. Give me a row of orc necks and room to swing, and all weariness will fall from me. So awesome.
Yeah, he's great. So this attack starts really in the middle of the night. It's past midnight.
Yeah.
It's completely dark. The orcs have put out their fires because
they picked off by archers.
Well, the people who were defending the dike could see their fires.
Yeah.
And it says that they filled the dike with orcs.
Yeah. So the rear guard of the Westfolders now have been driven back.
Yeah, but then we get this really awesome description of like the landscape of the battle.
Yeah.
When there's a flash of lightning.
Yeah, how cool is that?
I wonder if Tolkien ever saw anything like this, in World War I.
Yeah.
Branched lightning smote down upon the eastward hills. For a staring moment, the watchers on the walls saw all the space between them and the dike lit with white light. It was boiling and crawling with black shapes, some squat and broad, some tall and grim, with high helms and sable shields. Hundreds and hundreds were pouring over the dike and through the breach. The dark tide flowed up to the walls from cliff to cliff. Thunder rolled in the valley. Rain came lashing down. So they just see this for a minute, or not even a minute, just a second. When that lightning flashes, it says this roiling,
boiling mass of
like
people.
Ants or anything that swarms, right? It's not individuals. It's just like this like mass of life.
Yeah.
He even kind of describes it here as kind of pouring or flowing like water.
Yeah, thick as marching ants.
And they're shooting arrows as fast as they can, but it's almost like it doesn't matter. There's just so many.
I love this description as well. It goes that to the men of the mark, it seemed to them upon a great field of dark corn, tossed by a tempest of war, and every ear glinted with barbed light.
Yeah. The assault on Helm's Deep had begun, but no sound or challenge was heard within. No answering arrows came. So there's like a stillness.
Yeah.
Or like a stoicism to the people defending the wall.
Right.
They're not like screaming out or anything like that. They're just there. It's really grim, kind of. But the enemy has trumpets. They have trumpets. They have wild men from the Dunland Fells.
Yeah.
And they have siege works. They've got
these trees that they use as battering rams.
Yeah, battering rams that they bring up to the Hornburg Gate.
As well as like grappling hooks and
ladders
and hundreds of ladders that they're putting against the walls. But they, are focusing all of their force on this big door.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes, the trees swung by strong arms smote the timbers with a rending boom. Again and again, the great rams swung and dashed. So Éomer and Aragorn are standing together at the deeping wall, and they see the peril that the gates are in. And so Aragorn says, "Come, this is the hour when we draw swords together." And it says, running like fire, they sped along the wall and up the steps and passed into the outer court upon the rock. They gathered a handful of stout swordsmen, and they go out the small postern door that opened into an angle of the burg wall in the west. And they spring through the door, and they start to just like mow through the people who are attacking this gate.
Yeah. They use the names of their swords as a battle cry. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. Guthwine, cried Éomer. Guthwine for the mark. Anduril, cried Aragorn. Anduril for the Dunedain. And then he says, Anduril goes to war. The blade that was broken shines again.
Well, that's what everyone else says. A shout goes up from the wall.
Oh, I missed that. Oh,
they like see it. They're like, Anduril. Yeah, they're like, they're so inspired by this like act of heroism that they're like, oh heck yeah, Anduril, the blade that was broken is forged again. Like, let's go, baby. So they're outside of the defense. They've kind of like snuck along to be in front of this gate. So they're undefended right now. So Éomer says, come, we must get back and see what we can do to pile stones and beam across the gates within. Come now. And as they turn to like run back inside, it says, some dozen orcs that had lain motionless among the slain leapt to their feet and came silently and swiftly behind them. So that's terrifying. Like orcs playing dead that jump up and just like grab your ankles.
Yeah,
so they They flung themselves to the ground at Éomer's heels, tripped him, and in a moment they were on top of him. But a small, dark figure that none had observed sprang out of the shadows and gave a hoarse shout. Baruch Kazad! An axe swung and swept back. 2 orcs fell headless, and the rest fled. Our guy Gimli. Awesome. The Éomer turns towards him and says, I thank you, Gimli, son of Glóin. I did not know that you were with us in the sortie, but oft the unbidden guest proves the best company. And Gimli's like, yeah, bro, I was about to fall asleep. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna follow these dudes. And so I sat in a stone. Well, I looked out in the Helm and they seemed a little big for me. Orcs are more my size.
Isn't that weird that he says that?
Well, I think it's like, he's a short little guy. He's not going to go like, this is grounded in reality. All right. If you're 2 feet taller than someone, you're probably at a pretty big advantage in a battle. Right. So like orcs are more his size, He's like, I looked on the hillmen and they seemed overlarge for me. So I sat beside his stone to see your sword play. Awesome. Éomer's like, I won't find it easy to repay you. So how quickly these guys went from being like threatening to kill each other 2 days ago or 4 days ago at this point. And now they're like, ha, 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 ha.
It reminds me of Gimli and Legolas, becoming friends. And I also think Gimli's just like a likable dude.
Yeah.
You kind of can't help but like him,
Yeah, totally. So these are his 2 first kills. And he goes, 2, putting his hand on his axe. 2, said Legolas. I've done far better. Though now I must grope for spent arrows. All mine are gone. Yet I make my tale 20 at least. But that is only a few leaves in a forest.
Legolas is the characterization is so strong. It's always about forests and leaves and things like that.
Right.
20, that's a lot. Yeah. But he started shooting arrows before the battle even started, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So the orcs, they are kind of constantly pushing past these outer defenses and causing the men to retreat further and further into the defenses of Helm's Deep. Gimli says, the orcs are behind the wall. Oi, oi, come, Legolas, there are enough for us both. Khazad, Aminu.
They sneak through a culvert. There's like a drain or something in the bottom of the wall. Is that right?
Yeah, it says orcs had crept like rats through the culvert through which the stream flowed out. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so there's some it's like a flaw, in the wall.
Right.
In a way. And then, but Gimli is the one who sees it.
So Gimli, he gets himself 19 more kills here.
He gets himself 19 more kills. They push back the little rats that snuck through the culvert. And then, and then the, is it Gambling who says
Gambling the Old.
Aren't dwarves supposed to be good with rocks?
Yeah.
And they plug up the hole with, anything to hand. Gimli's
he does everything that he can. Yeah.
I love Gimli's line here. I mean, Gimli he gets so many great lines.
This is his chapter, man.
Yeah. We don't shape stones with battle axes, nor with our fingernails, said Gimli. But I will help as I may.
And he does. I mean, he plugs it up good.
So all of a sudden he becomes like a foreman. It's like as dwarfy as you can get, he's like
100%. He's got his high-vis vest on.
Gimli is like the heart of the chapter. He's like the beating heart of the chapter, in my opinion. And he gets up to 21.
Legolas gets up to 24, though. He's always just a little bit ahead of him.
24. And he says, it has been knife work up here.
Yeah, and he's sharpening his knife as they come up with like a wedding stone.
Yeah, exactly. But it also means it's like close combat.
I love this exchange here. We get, they all kind of like convene back together. You got like Gambling the Old. You got Aragorn, Éomer. The Aragorn looks at the pale stars and at the moon. So that means that the storm clouds have kind of receded at this point.
This is where the chapter turns.
Yeah.
They see the moon. He looks up at the stars, and then Aragorn starts talking about the dawn.
Says, this is a night as long as years. How long will the day tarry? And Gambling is like, dawn's not far off, but dawn will not help us, I fear. And then this line, Aragorn says, yet dawn is ever the hope of men.
I think right there you're like, oh, they're going to win.
Yeah. That's King Aragorn right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we get into this next piece, and I think it's pretty complicated, but maybe it's worth talking about a little bit.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about kind of the motivations of the Dunlendings?
So there's Dunlendings, there's also wild men, and I think those two things are a little bit different because I think the Dunlendings have been settled people with their own kind of towns and culture. And I think the mountain men are related to them, but they're more what certain settled people in history would have called barbarians or something.
Do you want to take a minute to talk about how to the wild men and the Dunlendings, the Arolingus are part of the Numenorian colonization conspiracy? Like, do you want to talk about how they're kind of like long held resentment to the men of Numenor and their colonization kind of plays out here?
Yeah, sure. So I think part of the reason we know that they're a little different here is because it talks about wild men of the hills. And then Éomer says, I hear them, but they are only the scream of birds and the bellowing of beasts to my ears. And then Gimli says, yet there are many that cry in the Dunland tongue.
Right.
I know that tongue. It's an ancient speech of men, and once was spoken in many western valleys of the Mark. And then he says, hark, they hate us, and they are glad, for our doom seems certain to them. The king, they cry. We will take their king. Death to the foregoil, death to the strawheads, death to the robbers of the north.
The robbers of the north.
Yeah. What's a robber of the north? And it says that they haven't forgotten their grievance, that the lords of Gondor gave the mark to Eorl the Young and made alliance with them.
Over 500 years. So there's that 500 years that Legolas was talking about last chapter.
So there's an even longer history. It's not just about the Arolingus. It's about a history with the people of Numenor coming over to Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And setting up
colonies.
Colonies, and then like also like an extractive colonization. So the Numenorians get their own island, right?
Yeah.
They help the elves just defeat Morgoth. They move over to their island. The second age begins.
Yes.
And even though the island has everything that they need and everything they could ever want, they get to the point where they're like, oh, we kind of want more, you know?
We can extract from Middle Earth this land that we left.
So they come over to Middle Earth, and one of the places that they set up a colony is at the mouth of the river Gwathlo, which is the Gray Flood.
Yes.
The reason it's called the Gwathlo is because it was so shaded by trees that the river was gray.
Mm.
That's how many trees are there. And it says that the sort of forefathers of the Dunlanders set up on the shores of this river. Right. Well, then the Numenorians come and they start chopping down trees. And not only do they devastate the forests, it's also sort of like genocidal, right? Yeah. So that goes way back, right? This is like thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Then after the king of Alfarzon, the 25th king of Numenor, goes and tries to kill God because he wants to live forever and dominate everything. Right. And this is like fast forwarding a lot, right? Right. Numenor gets swallowed up by the sea, and the faithful who didn't try to kill God come over and they set up Gondor and Arnor. Right. But Gondor and Arnor are also imperial powers, right? In a place where people already live. Things go along, then there's kind of a watchful peace, right? There's wars and things like that. But part of the story of Gondor and Arnor is that they are constantly at war with people around them. For 1,000 years, they're at war.
Yeah.
Not because like God chose them to be like, you know, God's fanciest little boys who get to rule over everything, but because they have this, you know, because imperial dominating, you know, it's about sin for Tolkien, I think.
Yeah.
But the Dunlanders, they're exploited by like their hatred for Gondor, which comes out of this history of domination, genocide, colonization. There's some description that the plains around the Gwathlo go from being forest to being basically desert.
Yeah.
Like that's how many trees they cut down.
Right.
And so, you know, this kind of genocidal history is being played out now, and Sauron is exploiting that for his own gain.
Yeah, it even says here that old hatred Sauron has inflamed.
Right. And at some point there was a period where the Dunlanders had really settled in a lot of this land that's now Rohan.
Right.
But that was given over to
Eorl.
Eorl the Young, which I think is natural, right? Like these guys were our like
allies in war.
it reads like history, right? These guys were our allies, and so we're gonna give them this land, even though it was really never theirs to begin. It was never theirs to give to begin with. That's where I see kind of like a sympathetic read on like why these guys are here.
Yeah.
It's not just because Saruman is evil or that they are somehow more evil than Gondor. It comes out of the like sinful the state of the human condition, right?
Wow, that's a great reading. I'm really glad that you took the time to explain that.
But that being said, our protagonists, we're like rooting for these guys, right? We're not rooting for the Dunlanders.
Oh, absolutely not. Because if the Dunlanders get what they want, at the end of the day, the world will be destroyed.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks.
That was a worthy aside. Thank you
for that aside. Pretty soon here we get the
Fire of Orthanc.
Fire of Orthanc. Right after we're told that no foe has ever taken the Hornburg.
Yeah, we hear that a couple times.
Yeah.
That this comes from Aragorn, the mouth of Aragorn. He says, "Nonetheless, day will bring hope to me. Is it not said that no foe has ever taken the Hornburg if men defend it?" "So the minstrels say," said Éomer. "Then let us defend it in hope." So this is the bit where I said it's kind of like you can almost imagine it like a stage play. You know, all the characters are standing and they're listening to the voices of the Dunlandings, and they're describing the voices of the Dunlandings.
I think that's such a great description, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I love you so much.
I love you too. Caw. It says, even as they spoke, there came a blare of trumpets. Then there was a crash and a flash of flame and smoke. Crash and a flash of flame and smoke. What a beautiful piece of prose there.
Crash and a flash. Awesome.
Crash and a flash of flame and smoke. It's got such a bum, but a bum, but a bum, but bum.
Mm-hmm.
The waters of the deepening stream poured out hissing and foaming. They were choked no longer. A gaping hole was blasted in the wall. A host of dark shapes poured in. So this is the part where I'm just like, okay, this is like, it's like Hamlet, or it's you just imagine Aragorn standing center stage and saying, "Devilry of Sauron, they have crept in the culvert again while we talked, and they have lit the fire of Orthanc beneath our feet. Elendil, Elendil," he shouted as he leapt down into the breach. But even as he did so, 100 ladders were raised against the battlements. Over the wall and under the wall, the last assault came sweeping like a dark wave upon a hill of sand. The defense was swept away.
Again, the last assault. Isn't that interesting? Right? Like, I mean, I know the wall has been breached. So, right after we were told that no foe has ever taken the Hornburg, they take it, essentially.
Well, they take they're taking like one defense at a time. The Hornburg itself is now where that's where they're all going to retreat now too.
Yeah, right.
So the orcs are kind of like working their way through all these defenses, and kind of the last line of defense is now the Hornburg.
Yeah.
And so Aragorn is standing as basically the last man, making sure that everyone else can get in. And do you want to read the description of like his kind of last stand here?
Yeah, it's so heroic, right? To like be the last man out there. Aragorn's at the bottom of this stair. Everyone has gotten past him. And it says, in his hand still Anduro gleamed, and the terror of the sword for a while held back the enemy. As one by one, all who could gain the stair passed up towards the gate. So just Aragorn with his sword, like, keeps the enemy at bay.
Yeah,
right?
Everyone else is able to kind of stream past him. And Legolas is kind of kneeling above and behind him, and he yells down. Yeah, and he yells at Aragorn, "All who can have now got safe within, Aragorn. Come back." And so Aragorn himself is kind of the last to retreat into the Hornburg.
Yeah.
And he says, "Things go ill, my friends," wiping the sweat from his brow.
Legolas is wondering where Gimli is, and they don't know. This is where we kind of lose touch with Gimli. And I think we hear more about him in the next chapter.
Aragorn says, "I don't know where he is. I last saw him fighting on the ground behind the wall, but the enemy swept us apart. Let us hope that he will escape back to the caves. Such a refuge will be to the liking of a dwarf.
And Legolas, really, he wants to tell him that his tale is now 39. He's killed 39 orcs.
Yeah.
Never did I see an axe so wielded, Aragorn says.
Yeah.
So, Gimli, he's his own kind of legendary character.
Yeah.
And they just love him. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Aragorn now is giving kind of a battle update to Theoden. He tells him, the orcs have brought a devilry from Orthanc. They have a blasting fire, and with it they took the wall. If they cannot come in the caves, they may seal up those who are inside, but now we must turn all our thought to our own defense. And Theoden's like, you know what? I ain't going to go out like that.
Yeah. I love what he says. Again, he says, it's said that the Hornburg has never fallen to assault.
Yeah.
But now my heart is doubtful. The world changes, and all that once was strong now proves unsure.
How shall any tower withstand such numbers and such reckless hate?
Yeah.
Here's this like note of regret. Again, he goes, had I known that the strength of Isengard was grown so great, maybe I should not so rashly have ridden forth to meet it for all the arts of Gandalf. His counsel seems not now so good as it did under the morning sun.
He's wavering a little.
He's wavering, but he's also like, I don't want to be stuck in a prison. He's like, if I could have set a spear in rest, riding before my men upon the field, maybe I could have felt again the joy of battle and so ended, but I serve little purpose here. So he's like, hey, like, yeah, I don't want to be pinned up like this. I don't want to be caught like a badger in a trap. Aragorn says, like, basically like, hey, don't judge the counsel of Gandalf until it's all over. Like, he told us he's going to come back, and he will. But the king says, the end will not be long, but I will not end here, taken like an old badger in a trap. Snowmane and Hasselfell and the horses of my guard are in the inner court. When dawn comes, I will bid men sound Helm's horn, and I will ride forth. Will you ride with me, son of Arathorn? Maybe we shall cleave a road, or make such an end as will be worth a song, if any be left to sing of us hereafter. Do you want to talk about the parlay? This part's weird, right?
This part is weird. It says that Aragorn stands before the gates.
And he puts his hand out in a sign of parlay.
But he looks up and he sees the eastern sky grow pale. So we go back a couple pages to Aragorn's hope in the dawn.
Yeah, so he's almost like buying time, huh?
Yeah, and then he raises his hand, and the orcs, just jeer him. Aragorn just says, it's almost like he goes out there to kind of show that he's unbothered by the orcs or something.
Yeah.
And they say, what are you doing? Just looking at how great we are? We're the fighting Uruk-hai, and they're so overconfident, the Uruk-hai, which we also got in the chapter where they have Merry and Pippin.
Yes.
And Aragorn says, I just looked out to see the dawn.
What of the dawn, they jeered. We're the Uruk-hai. We're able to fight when the sun is out, idiot.
Yeah.
None knows what the new day shall bring him, said Aragorn. Get you gone, ere it turn to your evil.
It's almost like he's prophesying or something like that.
Yeah.
He's like he's coming out to tell them, we're coming for you. Like, we're not we're not the defenders anymore.
No,
we're the attackers.
It's like, hey, you've been warned, all right? Once Aragorn starts using these and thous and geese and
yeah, it's on. Like that's so funny. The more kingly he gets, the more powerful he is, right? Like,
and they're like struck by that. Aragorn's royalty is just like apparent to them. It says, so great a power and royalty was revealed in Aragorn as he stood there alone above the ruined gates before the host of his enemies, that many of the wild men paused and looked back over their shoulders to the valley, and some looked up doubtfully at the sky. The men, at least, so the orcs, it says the orcs laughed with odd voices, but the men, at least, are like unable to deny their king.
Right, exactly. And so, orcs can't recognize true like majesty, but a human can look up and be like, oh,
that's my king.
Yeah. Like,
and that kind of gets to how, like, you're not in Tolkien, you're not the king because your dad is rich.
You're the king because God made you the king.
The king.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's undeniable. And that's when Theoden does exactly what he said he was going to do. He lets out a sound, sudden and terrible, from the tower above. The sound of the great horn of Helm rang out. And you know what is the only thing that can make this better?
If Fatty Bulger blew the horn.
Fatty Bulger!
Fatty Bulger.
Fatty Bulger! Fire, foes, awake! Fatty Bulger's in the house! They're going out with their spears in their hands on the backs of their horses who they love. And the men cry, Helm, Helm! Helm is arisen and comes back to war. Helm for Theoden King.
That's so cool.
It's like, hey, this legendary warrior has come back from the dead, and you're looking at him.
Yeah.
And with that shout, the king came. His horse was white as snow. Golden was his shield, and his spear was long.
Yeah.
At his right hand was Aragorn, Elendil's heir. Behind him rode the lords of the house of Eorl the Young. Light sprang in the sky. Night departed. The sun rises.
That's another example, right, of like the natural world reflecting something in our characters.
Yeah.
That somehow, you know, Aragorn's hope in the dawn that happens while it's still dark.
Yeah.
Is now fulfilled here as they are riding out. It all happens together.
They mow through the hosts of Isengard as a wind among the grass. Captains and champions fell or fled before them. They cried and wailed, for fear and great wonder had come upon them with the rising of the day.
So they completely rout the orcs and the men who are attacking. It says that their backs were to the swords and spears of the riders and their faces to the valley. They cried and wailed, for fear and great wonder had come upon them with the rising of the day.
Yeah. They completely drive him back.
Yeah, it's a complete reversal of the way the battle has been up to this point.
And when they get out there and they're able to see, they find that the geography has completely changed.
Yeah.
It says the land had changed. Where before the green dale had lain, its grassy slopes lapping the ever-mounting hills, there now a forest loomed. Great trees, bare and silent, stood, rank on rank, with tangled bough and hoary head. Their twisted roots were buried in the long green grass.
That is terrifying. To like come out and all of a sudden there's a full-grown forest.
Yeah.
And it's the Tolkien gets to fulfill his childhood wish of Macbeth.
Yeah.
Being overwhelmed by not just people waving branches, but like really a forest moving.
The forest marching to war. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly upon a ridge appeared a rider clad in white, shining in the rising sun.
G for grand.
1,000 men stood on foot, their swords in their hands. Amid them strode a man tall and strong. His shield was red, and he came to the valley brink. He set his lips to a great black horn and blew a ringing blast.
So now there's horns in Helm's
on both sides.
Horns on both sides, yeah.
Erkenbrand, the rider shouted. Erkenbrand! Behold the white rider, cried Aragorn. Gandalf is come again. And Legolas says, this is wizardry indeed. Come, I would look on this forest ere the spell changes. So he's thinking that like Gandalf has like cast some sort of spell that makes it look like there's a forest there.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. Yeah, but it actually is a forest. I mean, I would look on this forest. Huh.
Ere the spell changes. And so they leap down this slope. Shadowfax runs like a deer, sure-footed in the mountains. The white rider was upon them, and the terror of his coming filled the enemy with madness. The wild men fall on their faces before him. The orcs reel and scream and cast aside both sword and spear.
They drop their weapons.
Wailing, they passed under the waiting shadow of the trees, and from that shadow, none ever came again.
Yeah, so the forest just like crushes them. Pretty
What a
cool.
chapter.
Pretty cool.
I think it's my favorite chapter so far.
It's a great chapter.
I feel like this is like we're fully in like Lord of the Rings proper now. Caw-caw!
Fatty Bulger. Now that the orcs have been crushed in the forest, we want to say thank you for reading along with us. You can join us next week for Book 3, Chapter 8 of The Two Towers, The Road to Isengard. As always, if you want to help us out, you can share this podcast with a Lord of the Rings fan in your life. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, leave a review, subscribe on YouTube, tell your mom, and visit waywardwizards.com for more info. But until next time, remember, dawn is ever the hope of men. We'll see you then.
See you next week.